Good afternoon. My name is Lamont Ingalls, one of the early members of Team Gay that brought out the posthumous works of William Gay. I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee, grew up in northern Davidson County, spent about 20 years there and in school in Knoxville. And then later I moved to New Orleans, where I spent about 20 years in New Orleans. And I also got a bachelor's degree from Tulane in English. Currently on the upper East Coast of Florida, been here since about 2000, and semi-retired now, but still very much involved with the literary world, either by reading or by writing or by editing. And I'm about 20 miles south of Daytona. A little bit of history, my connection with William's work. I think about 2001, I was up in Nashville and I met Michael White. He was interviewing me to do some work in Jacksonville with a group that he wrote grants for. As it turns out, we didn't get to talk too much about grants. We talked about everything else, including our mutual interest in Buddhism, Southern literature, poetics, and the beats. And then from there, I'd edited Michael knew I'd edited a few books for publications, everything from art therapy to using a digital camera. And as it turns out, we had a correspondence going on among all these topics. And eventually, Michael had discovered William Gay in Hohenwald, where he used to go to Hohenwald to do some grant writing for the Buffalo Valley group there. And he found William, and he searched for him. And he's recounted this several times, but he searched for him, finally found him, discovered that he was a very fine novelist. As I said, I had read a lot of Southern literature, but I had never heard of William Gay until about 20 years ago. And so as things evolved, and Michael spent more time with William, he knew that he'd published, of course, the novels and short stories. But William had written quite a bit of nonfiction, mostly about music, and some memoirs too. He'd been in Paste magazine, No Depression, Oxford American. And Michael decided this would be good to work with William to gather his nonfiction writing and publish it as a book. Of course, William, I think, was fairly excited about that. He knew everything about country music and the blues. And of course, Bob Dylan was one of his saints. I didn't get to Tennessee too often. I didn't have too many relations there, other than, as it turns out, my sister, who lived about 60 miles north of William. So serendipitously, I was going to visit her, and Michael said, "I'll meet you over there and at Williams in Hohenwald, and then I'll take you to see William." And that was, I believe, April, maybe late spring of 2005. And so Michael, I think he wanted me to meet William so badly. He knew his stature. He's very impressed by his work. He actually made a 200-mile round trip to escort me to Hohenwald. And as it turns out, I went over there with Michael, whom William used to call the professor, as Michael's background is in anthropology and philosophy. So we met with William late afternoon, probably got there. It's a little Swan Creek out there on the eastern edge of Hohenwald. I'd met several writers, but never really had an extensive conversation with any person I'd known and I'd met. So William was a pretty impressive person. He knew literature forwards and backwards. His house was filled with books, with magazines, all kinds of CDs, all kinds of DVDs. He constantly read or watched his DVDs. I think he had a fairly extensive correspondence too. Although William, at that time, he wasn't really traveling very much. Now, I believe Sonny Brewer was squiring him around to various festivals and workshops and some of the readings that he gave. Other than that, I'm not even certain by that time if he was even driving. But we had a nice conversation about some about New Orleans, which he really didn't care too much for the city. You know, I think Hohenwald Wall was his place, and that's where he planted his roots, and didn't really travel much from there. So, but I remember of William as he listened very carefully to you, and his speech was very calm, very confident, and he could draw out his knowledge of literature or music just almost immediately. I believe he was famous for his photographic memory, as being a Flannery O'Connor fan. I would occasionally make a quotation from O'Connor, and then he would finish the page or the next two pages. That's how much he knew. Of course, he was a great fan of hers. What I remember about William also is that he's just a very gracious person, unpretentious, very humble. And you know, I think he was always. I think the work was always on his mind. In that sense, you might say he was somewhere else, even as he was speaking with you. In other words, he was within whatever story he was writing. So the night went very well. We were there 2 or 3 hours. I was very grateful to have met William. And then I went back to Florida after that, because Michael retired to his place about 40 miles east of Nashville. And my only correspondence with William after that was through his work and through the compilation we were working on. That compilation, which also included 8 pages of his paintings. I think it's the first time any of his paintings had ever been published. The book is called Time Done Been, Won't Be No More, published in 2010 through Michael's Wild Dog Press, which has since morphed into a nomalaic press, a nomalaic being one of William's favorite words, ones that he coined. And another of his favorite words is Fortean, because he loved to read the works of Charles Fort, you know, these compilations of these strange and unusual events like frogs raining from the sky or people spontaneously combusting, you know, on their stoop somewhere. So it's quite a, you know, it was quite a very well educated person in his own way. In other words, I don't think he spent any time in the classroom, but he was a classroom unto himself. I believe he did. Actually, I believe he did teach at Sewanee and at the University of Mississippi as a visiting writer. You know, the students adored him, I've heard. Later, after we got involved with this book, and I'm sure Michael has related this story several times, it's very much a part of Stories from the Attic, where he recounts how he recovered the manuscripts. Basically, they were in a house, and then this is after William had died in 2012, February of 2012. There was a house at that time where I believe William's grandchildren, three boys, I believe, and their father and the mother, unfortunately, had passed away by that time, were living. And I believe Michael knew that he had lived there. He said he wondered what was in the attic. And then the rest is history. He found boxes buried under dust, and placed behind, I believe, maybe a piece of wallboard. And of course, the stories were in those boxes. You know, William was I guess he didn't really. Once he finished something, he was over it. He didn't go back to it. And of course, you know, his filing system, I think, was just sort of throwing the manuscript in whatever form it was, whether written and typed or some combination of the same, into a box, maybe labeling the files. And then from there, you know, once he tried to get it published, or maybe he was waiting to send out the manuscript, the completed manuscript. But then he got on to something else, and it was never looked at again. So through serendipity and good fortune, Michael was able to bring several boxes, retrieve several boxes from the attic, and those became the 5 books that have been published posthumously. And my role in those, because they're all novels. There's one that said we published the first prose collection, and then the others were novels published by a combination of Anomaly Press, Zank Books, and Livingston Press out of the University of West Alabama. And my role in those, the original handlers there, of course, Sheila Kennedy, who fortunately had been someone who typed up quite a bit of Williams' works before his manuscripts. It was hand scrawled, you might say, so she knew it was William hieroglyphics. She could decipher them. And of course, Susan McDonald and Michael White, they compiled and rearranged, you might say, in the sense that this story goes here, this story goes there, all this character is coming in here. It was quite a job of literary archaeology, with Michael being the lead archaeologist. And from there, once we started, as I said, I've been involved with some literary projects with Michael before, and he asked me to work on this. So there was the original 4 of us, and shortly thereafter, I guess within a few months after we started on the first book there, the first novel, Paul Nietzsche from Wisconsin gave us quite a bit of, he asked to help, and we're very glad for the help. As he said, he was a super fan of Williams and was thrilled to be able to work on this project. And of course, the manuscripts themselves, once they were sorted and typed into the computer and puzzled over and some of the scenes set in place, able to send it out. And by that time, there was really not much to be done to them. That is, my job was just to do a lot of proofreading, maybe look for some anomalies in the narrative. Maybe one of it was raining at the beginning, right in the sentence before, and then it wasn't raining, and then it's like, well, you have to say it's been raining through this, or maybe some road turned from a concrete road to an asphalt road in the same paragraph, so you change that around. And some little rearranging to make sure that whose voice was whose was evident to the reader. But I think we did a very good job of the feedback we've gotten over the years of the various novels we've got, and of course the collection of short stories, of which I might add, I believe William is a master. I think he's equal to Flannery O'Connor in American literature. Once we got that, it was ready to go out into the world. And fortunately, people at Zank Press, particularly Michelle Daughter, saw the value here of publishing these, and we knew there were quite a few fans out there. So we're glad to get his words back in circulation. And personally, I was glad to see that brilliant work back and available to the readers, the old ones and new ones of Williams. And I was glad to have a hand in it. I was worked on each book. We would look very carefully, make sure that there really wasn't virtually no additions or rewriting of anything. Once William got to the end of the story, it was about ready to go. It's just his filing system was kind of chaotic. So other than of course, we continue, as I said, unfortunately, the last book, the Stories from the Attic. That's the final compilation of a group of unpublished short stories, which to me, I'm not sure whether were unpublished prior to this, because they stand up with any of his stories published in his first collection. I hate to see that Evening Sun go down. So as I said, and as Team Gay has come along, as the books have come out, we've been joined by several other people from academia and other writers too. all the way from California to Georgia. So it's been a good experience, and always more eyes on these prized manuscripts, the better. Well, it's just kind of sad to me that we've gotten to the end of the work, but who knows? You know, there's a legendary lost manuscript of, I think, The Trace, which is Williams' historical novel set along the Natchez Trace back in the early 1800s. And there's also parts of that are actually appear at the end of Stories from the Attic, as does fragments from the wreck of the Tennessee Gravy Train, which was a novel, which we only have a small portion. The book is based on William's uncle Scott, who was a renowned psychic and also breeder of fighting roosters. So that's an odd combination, but you would only find that, I think, in Lewis County, Tennessee. And dear readers and fans of Southern literature, I hope you visit the show at the Decatur Library.